Hi everyone. Now that we've completed our plan for our narrative topic this week, where we choose a theme and we write a narrative story about that, embedding that theme into our story, our focus today is to work on writing a beginning. When we write a beginning, it's important to establish your setting of where and when the story takes place, but a beginning is also the perfect opportunity to introduce your reader to your character or characters that the story is about. The craft that we're going to use today is specific details. That's where we use specific names of people, places, and things. Those are also referred to as proper nouns. When we use proper nouns, we capitalize them because they are specific names of people. So when I look at my beginning, I quickly revisit my ideas that I had, but I want to think about how I can use those specific details in my writing for my beginning so that I can help introduce the reader to my narrative story, where I choose a theme and kind of weave that into my story. So when we start writing any paragraph, we know that we indent. And what I'm going to start my beginning by saying is long ago and far away. Now, usually this phrase would indicate that I'm telling a fairy tale, but the way that I'm using it, it's my own voice of being sarcastic, because literally this was a very long time ago for me, and from where I live now to where I was living at the time, it was far away, but I need to show my reader that. Let's see, the town was called West Hartford, so that's specific, so I need to capitalize the W for West. Dropping down to the next line so that I have more space to write Hartford and capital H for Hartford. When we're separating a city from a state, we use a comma. And the state that I lived in and grew up in is Connecticut. And the way that I always remember spelling Connecticut is sounding it out. It's spelled Connect-I-cut. But we don't say it like that. That's just how I remembered to write it as a kid, and still to this day. So I sat in, let's see, Mrs. Keegan's class is my topic. So I need to capitalize my character of Mrs. Keegan, Mrs. Keegan's, and it was 6th grade class. So I have that, and if I wanted to just add a little bit more with large windows overlooking, let's see, there were always tall oak trees. So typical classroom had these nice big windows that I got to look through. So I often found myself daydreaming about what I'd rather be doing. And I know a lot of kids do this, and obviously I did too. I was a kid once upon a time. I often found myself daydreaming about what I would rather be doing. I would rather be doing. End of my complete thought, so I'm going to put a period right there. That kind of describes myself as the character of being a daydreamer, but now I got to talk about Mrs. Keegan. Mrs. Keegan, and because this is in the past, she wore reading glasses, perched, meaning they sat perched on the tip of her nose, I'm going to use a list right here to list what Mrs. Keegan looked like. So Mrs. Keegan wore reading glasses perched on the tip of her nose. Her gray, and I spell gray, G-R-E-Y, her gray hair never, and I'm putting that in all capitals because I want extra emphasis on that word, never moved, comma. And my last item in the list, what was the last thing? She always had, and a hard, stern, which means serious, a hard, stern look that never cracked a smile. Cracked a smile. So I'm really showing my reader this picture of what Mrs. Keegan looked like. So I'm going to finish up my beginning, my introduction to my setting. Let's see. I need to explain to the reader so they understand where I'm going. So Mrs. Keegan, again, she's my specific detail. Mrs. Keegan was not, and I'm going to put that in all capital letters, was not my biggest fan. And you all might be wondering, and the reader would wonder, how come? Why not? So she, and I can say she because now we know we're talking about Mrs. Keegan, she called me a dreamer. Now, most of us would think a dreamer is a good thing to be, but in Mrs. Keegan's class, you didn't dream. You did your work, and that was that, plain and simple. So as a closer, I can say, but not in a good way. A good way. I need to finish one final sentence so that I can lead into my first middle main idea. Little did she know that with hard work, I would surprise her. I would surprise her. So I have my specific details in my beginning with West Hartford, notice the capitals, Connecticut, Mrs. Keegan. 6th grade is also a specific detail, and I've introduced my reader to when and where this story takes place, and I've also introduced the characters. There's Mrs. Keegan and there's myself, and that's exactly what you'll work on today. Happy writing, everyone!